Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the 1 hour series. Tonight we have another special guest. His name is Leroy Reams. I'm sure everybody knows Leroy, but I just want to mention a few of his credits, a few of his many credits. He's played, he's an actor who played in multiple shows on Broadway and performed all around the world, and actually performed at the White House too. So I'll let Leroy talk a little bit more about that. Now, as always, what we do with most actor streams, Leroy will be talking about his career and giving tips to the actors. So if you guys have any questions, put them down in the comments as soon as we can so we can get to all of them, since we only do have 1 hour tonight. So the sooner you put your questions down, the higher the chance that we'll get to them tonight. Now, I would like to introduce to everyone Leroy. Here we go.
Hello, Julia.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm going to get to know you during this interview. And for all of your listeners, nothing is verboten. Whatever you want to know, I'm more than happy to tell you. No holds barred.
Yes. So, guys, put your questions down. Leroy's ready for them. Now, Leroy, could you talk a little bit about yourself? I know there's a lot to talk about, but just maybe some highlights. And I'm sure everybody wants to know about the White House and Hello, Dolly, of course, and
Yes.
all the other credits. Anything you'd like to mention or you can share with us, we'd love to know.
Well, I'm going to be talking about 78 years of my life, so we're not going to have enough time to talk about everything, but just to know that I've always been, I felt I'm a fortunate guy, and I've been lucky because I've always known what I wanted to do. And when I was a child growing up in Covington, Kentucky, I would get up, and I'm the youngest of 7 children. My mother had 5 children 2 years apart. Then she had a break for 9 years, and my sister came, and I came 16 months after my sister. So we were kind of reared as only children because we had older brothers and sisters. And my nieces and nephews I have a niece who's only 2 years younger than I. And so that's the way I grew up in a large Kentucky family. Nobody was necessarily artistic. My mom and dad were reared on a farm in the middle of the state. My dad became a conductor for the Louisville-Nashville Railroad, and they moved to Covington, Kentucky, which is across the river from Cincinnati, Ohio. The Ohio River separates the 2 cities, so they're sister cities, basically. And I was lucky to have been born there because I attended dancing school because I just did it. As a kid, when the music was on, I was in the middle of the floor carrying on. And, I've told this story many times, but for those people who haven't heard it, just that my mother read in the paper that the local dance school would give you a free pair of tap shoes, sign your child up for lessons, and you got to be in the recital. And off I went. And that was the beginning. And the sign outside the studio said, tap toe ballet, acrobatic, baton ballroom, voice, personality, and culture. And so that started me off. So I did the whole dancing school circuit. I can tell many, many stories about that. And then I was lucky that at the University of Cincinnati, they had a theater arts major. And I went to the university and I attended the College Conservatory of Music, which was a separate school then, where I had a ballet scholarship and I studied voice. And then my junior year, they became a college within the university. So then some of my credits transferred, and then I graduated, and then I went to New York. And so along that way, anything you would like to know during those formative years, I'll be happy to share. Or, we can start right off when I landed in New York City. Actually, I didn't land. I was driven there by my professor from UC, Paul Rutledge. And that's how it all began.
Wow, that's an interesting journey. I mean, you're right. We can probably talk about, if we were to discuss everything, we'd probably have to be here for a few hours.
Well, the thing about anything that you do, a lot of people don't know what they want to do, and it's hard. But it was easy for me because I knew what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And so during those years, I prepared myself. I took a commercial course in high school so I could type and take shorthand, which I don't need anymore. But at least I would have something that I could use if I couldn't get a job acting at dancing or singing, I could at least get a job doing something. That's why I did it. So everything was geared to my coming to New York. I knew exactly where I was going to do, and I took advantage of attending all the dancing schools in my area, performing. And in Cincinnati, we were lucky that we had a ballet company, we had a symphony, we had an opera company at the Zoo Opera during the summer. That's where all the Met people came during the summer to work. And and then dancing at singing at all the local clubs. And then in high school, I actually put together the variety shows for the junior senior year. And then when I was in college, my junior senior year, I did a lot of the shows. I directed and choreographed them because my professor was kind enough to let me do it because I showed the talent. And so, and I got my equity card doing stock between my freshman and sophomore year in college. So when I graduated and I came to New York, I was trained and I was experienced and I was basically a working professional. So I didn't come to New York to study. I had already studied. And I think it's important for everyone who wants to go into the theater. First of all, most important, you have to have the passion and the dedication. I've seen a lot of people who definitely had the talent who didn't go. I've seen people with lesser talent who had the drive and they succeeded. So you have to have that focus if you want. But I think that's true in anything that you choose to do, but especially in the arts. You study and know what you have to do and be able to demonstrate it and show it. And if you're good at what you do, people will take advantage and they'll hire you. And if you're pleasant and you're easy enough to work with, they'll want to have you back again. So then you make your reputation if you want to keep working. And so I've been lucky that I've managed to do that. So when I came to New York the first time, I picked up the casting papers, show business and backstage. I read the want ads at the auditions that were coming up. And I read that the Julia Prowse nightclub act were needing one boy or one man or one dancer, singer, whatever. And so you had to be 6 feet tall. I'm actually between 5'11" and 6 feet. I used to be probably smaller now, but I get stretched to be 6 feet. So I went to the audition. And it was funny then because I wore ballet tights because you couldn't buy dance pants. They didn't make them. And the dancers made them for one another. But, I didn't have, so I went tights, which, was kind of funny when you think about it. But it's what I did. And at the audition, the manager of Julia Prowse was there and the choreographer, Ernest Flatt. And he had done the Gary Moore TV show. So he was a well-known choreographer. Of course, later he did the Carbonell show, which I did also in the beginning. So we can talk about that as we go along. So that's how I started out. And I got called back the next day. And I mean, I've got lots of stories to tell in between that, but just to give you an overall, then whatever piques your interest or your listeners, I'll, enrich. So my first job was a dancer with the Julia Prowse nightclub act. And back then, the Broadway salary was $125 to dance in the chorus or sing in the chorus, to be in the ensemble.
Is that per week or?
Yes, per week.
Okay, well, compared to what Broadway pays now.
That was 1965. Mm-hmm. And the Julia Prowse nightclub act paid me $350 a week with $400 when we went to Las Vegas. So that was my first audition and my first job in New York, and I got it. I fit the criteria, I could sing, I could dance, I was attractive, and Julia Prowse picked me, and that was the beginning. So through Juliet, I met a lot of people, but then when the show was over, the act was over, I came back to New York, and I got again the casting papers, and I auditioned for Sweet Charity, the Broadway musical, and I got it. And so my second job was with Bob Fosse and Whittenburton, which is about as good as it gets. So I went through that. And then when we came back to New York and we opened, Juliet asked me to go back and do her act. Then I accepted because it was 3 times the money that I was making on Broadway. And Bob Fosse was very upset with me and came into the dressing room, and because I handed him my notice on opening night. And he said, you know how many people who want to work with me, and we're going to have to go back in rehearsal to replace you. And why did you do this? I want to know a reason. I said, well, she pays me 3 times what you do. And he said, I can't, I can't fight that. So thank God he still liked me, because then he asked me to do the film. And I was also asked to do a wonderful trio number with Gwen on a Bob Hope special. And you can get it on YouTube. It's called Cool Hand Luke, because it was from the theme music of that. And then the Little Spanish Flea, the Herb Alpert tune, was the second part of it. So you can see the beginnings of what I did. And I'm very proud of that, by the way, and very proud to be associated with Bob Fosse and Gwen Verdon, who were geniuses. And that's how I started out, and everything came as a result of that.
Yeah, now I'm sure people would want to know what it was like working with Bob Fosse, because I mean, our generation, it's like, oh, we're taking all these Bob Fosse classes, but it's not like, they're being taught by Bob himself.
Yeah. Well, he was very unique in his style, and everybody wanted to work with him. And Gwen Verdon is probably, there will never be another person like Gwen Verdon on Broadway again. She was an incredible actress, dancer, and singer, and just so unique and wonderful. And, we do have some semblances of what she has done. You can, rent the Damn Yankees movie and see her, and, go on YouTube, thank God, and see a lot of things she did. But, to have witnessed her in a theater, it's about as good as you can get. So, and I was lucky to have worked for them, and also to have been friends with them. And one of the high points of my life was when the Fred Astaire Awards were being given out, and Bob Fosse received it for his choreography for a Broadway show that was a flop of his called Big Deal. And when he accepted the award, he talked about how insecure he has always been in his career, and because of the critics, and you think you've done your best work, and then it doesn't sell, and all of that stuff that we all go through. We're that vulnerable. We're at the taste of the critics. And so he said, so the show's closed, and here I am. But he said, I can tell you one thing I'm not insecure about, is the love I have for my dancers. And 4 of them are in the audience tonight, and I would like for them to stand up. And he said, Donna McKechnie, Leroy Reams, Anne Ryan King, and Ben Vereen. And I cried. It was a defining moment of my career, better so than maybe receiving an award, because there was someone that you admired and respected, singularly picking you to stand up and be recognized as one of his favorites. I was deeply, deeply touched. And that remained friends with them throughout my career. And I think the greatest thing I've taken from my career, not so much the awards or the money, but the people that I had the privilege of working with and learning from, and doing what I always dreamed I wanted to do. And that's been the big reward. I've been very lucky. I've been very lucky.
Yeah.
But I worked hard too.
Of course, yes.
I mean, if you want to achieve anything, you have to work at it, and you learn by doing, and you learn by doing with those people who have already done it, and that's the way it happens. And I, have quite a nice resume, having worked with some of the greats, all the major choreographers in the business I've worked with, many of the directors, many of the director choreographers, and all of the writers, the book writers, the songwriters, the lyric writers, the set designers, the lighting designers, the big names. I've worked with them. And to be accepted by them as a fellow artist, that's the big reward. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's amazing. And to follow up on that, actually, we have a question from the audience for you.
Yes.
But before I ask the question, I just want to give a shout out to Lawrence Loritz, who was also on our stream a couple of weeks ago. Hi, Lawrence, if you're still watching. He just said hello. And Lawrence is saying, love you, Leroy. So hello,
Thank you.
Lawrence, and hello to everybody else watching. I can only see people who comment, so if you want to say hello, put your comment down so we know you're there. Now, Steph Marie asked you a question. You've worked with so many amazing people, and then Steph listed a bunch of people you worked with, um, and so many more than what she's listed. Is there anyone you wish you would have had the opportunity to work with that you never did?
Yes. Hal Prince, Stephen Sondheim, Bernadette Peters, and Sandy Duncan.
Oh, you've got your list ready.
I know. I don't know Stephen and Hal that well because we never worked together. We knew each other professionally to say hello, and I know Bernadette and Sandy on a personal level, but we never had a chance to work together. And I regret that. I wish, but of course, I'm not dead yet, so there's still a chance for Bernadette and Sandy and me to work together. And Stephen is still writing, but he hasn't written anything recently. But I did do company and stock. So I have done a Stephen Sondheim show, and I was offered Follies with Juliet actually, but I was working then and couldn't accept the job. So
Mhm.
I've at least done some of the shows that they have done, and but I've never had the personal pleasure. And so
Now, can you talk a little bit about Hello Dolly and your experience
yes.
there and some other shows? Because just following up on what we discussed before the stream, I'm pretty sure a lot of people would love to hear your stories about that.
Well, Hello Dolly is a huge part of my life, and it's been responsible for a lot of my employment. And it started out I met Carol Channing when we did a musical called Lorelei. I played Henry Spofford, who was an Olympic athlete, and it was after Applause. And we went on tour for a year, then we played Broadway, and I became very friendly with Carol and her husband, Charles Lowe. And so after Lorelei closed, a couple of years later, I got a call on the phone. It was Carol, and she said, "Hello, Leroy. It's Carol, darling. Carol Channing," as if you couldn't tell. And she said, "I'm going to do a revival of Hello, Dolly, and I want you to play Cornelius Hackle, but Lucia Victor, the director, and Jerry Herman don't know you, dear, but don't worry, you got the part." I auditioned, and indeed I did get the role. And of course, that began my lifelong association with Jerry Herman because we became very close friends and remained so during his lifetime. So I did a lot of things with Jerry, and we actually put together a little show called An Evening with Jerry Herman that we did at the Booth Theatre in New York with Florence Lacey, Jerry at the piano, me, and a bass player. And so, and we also toured around with that show quite a bit. And then I directed a lot of productions of Hello Dolly with many great, great ladies. And I will try to mention them all. And so please forgive me if I leave someone out. But it was Madeline Kahn, Joanne Worley, Leslie Uggams, Randy Graff, Michelle Lee, Joanne Worley, um, Nicole Quasi, who was a French star. I directed the production there in Paris. So I've done a lot of Hello Dollies, and I've loved every single one of them. It's a great, great show, and I think it's the book that Michael Stewart wrote that he adapted the play, The Matchmaker, so beautifully. And he captured the essence of it and the story of rejoining the human race and going out in life and seeking your adventure. And that's such a wonderful thing to pursue. And so it's always been a pleasure. And the show's always different by the people who are cast in it. And each lady brought their own personality to it. And it was years and years of my employment. I don't say I have a favorite musical. It's like deciding between your children, but it certainly is one of the best. And then the show I did the longest, of course, was 42nd Street. I did that almost 8 years. And so it was a favorite. And then, of course, La Cage aux Folles, I was to have been the last replacement on Broadway, but I left 42nd Street to do it. But then they posted the notice the end of my first week of rehearsal. So I never got on. But then I did other productions of it. I did the major production at Paper Mill Playhouse in Milburn, New Jersey. And then I also did the 10th anniversary tour of the show. And I also played it in a lot of the residential theaters. So it's a favorite of mine too. Again, another Jerry Herman musical, which I have a tendency to gravitate to Jerry because of his philosophies and his rare talent as a composer lyricist. I know once that Julie Stein, who I had the pleasure of working with on LORELEI, of course, who wrote Funny Girl and Gypsy and all those wonderful shows. And he said to me one day he felt that Jerry Herman was the Irving Berlin of his generation, which is about the biggest compliment that you could receive. And so I knew Jerry very much on a personal level, and we were, together until he died. And so as I said, I'm a lucky guy. I've met all these great people along the way. I knew Ethel Merman. I knew Mary Martin. I worked with all the great choreographers. I never worked with Jerome Robbins, but he wasn't doing Broadway stuff by the time I came along. He was with New York City Ballet. But I did do an evening of Bernstein in Venice, Venice, Italy. And he was on the program because New York City Ballet had some dancers, so I met him there, but I never had the pleasure of actually working with them.
Yeah, actually, I see a comment from Lawrence just when you started talking about Madeline Kahn. Lawrence commented and said, "Can you tell them more about our friend Madeline and her Dolly tour?"
Sure. We met at Jerry Herman's townhouse in New York, which he no longer, of course, has. And Madeline came there, and Jerry and I met her, and we talked. And I said, well, Madeline, my advice to you while you have the time is that you come into rehearsal and be able to be off script, because it's a huge undertaking, and we only have about 10 days of rehearsal. So I want to give you all of the stuff, but I can't unless you know the dialogue, because it's going to be too hard. You're going to be overwhelmed. But if you come in knowing the script, I can throw it all at you and get as much out of it as I can. So she came in, we rehearsed down in Atlanta at the Theater of the Stars in Atlanta. And then she was going to the Muni in St. Louis, I think, and maybe Kansas City. I can't remember if they went there too, but it was a bit of a summer tour. But she came in knowing her dialogue, and we're near the same age. So we were contemporaries. We had that in common. And also I was an admirer of her work, but we didn't know each other. So the first day of rehearsal, I always start Dolly off learning the eating scene with Horace Vandergelder, because it's very complicated, because it's all the props and you have to have the timing. It's the most difficult part to do of the show. And so there's a thing where Dolly says, Horace Vandergelder, you go your way and I'll go mine. And it's a bit that you do, in the show. So I gave it to Madeline, and she said, I don't do bits. I said, I understand that and I appreciate it, but let me tell you by my experience, that is the way that's going to get the laugh. Now, it has to be, for my taste, be done that way to service the book and get the laugh, and also it's physical for the audience. But I can give you a reason why you're doing that move. So you say, you go your way and I'll go mine, then you take off your gloves, because a lady doesn't eat in her gloves at dinner. And so later in the scene, she repeats the line. And she said, okay, now what's the reason? I said, well, it's very simple. You're serving him the food. You have the big spoon and the fork, and so you go your way and I'll go mine. You click the utensils together and you put them down. And she said, that was cheap. And I said, yes, and you got your fucking motivation. And she laughed, just like you did. She laughed and she said, okay. So then we were off and running. And what was interesting is that everyone expected Madeline to be a comic, and she wasn't. She was a very serious actress. She definitely had a sense of humor, but she wasn't a comic who was always on shooting lines. That's not her personality. And so you have to respect her work as an actress, that she was very dedicated and needed motivation, which I was able to give her. And I know that we went through the process and then we got down to Atlanta. And, then she was going to have, we had a run through with piano. And the next afternoon, she would hear the orchestra for the very first time. And that night we opened. And she had only had rehearsal with the clothes the night before. And then that afternoon we had to skip to get the orchestra, through. And so we had to skip and she had to, get her costume changes and all that worked out. A big undertaking to do. And, but she was ready. She learned everything and we had rehearsed it. She was very disciplined. And so that night we opened. And the actor playing Ambrose Kemper came out for his entrance and he went up. He didn't say his line. And Madeline held up and she said, "Don't say another word, Mr. Kemper. I know exactly what you're going to say. You want to know why? Well, let me tell you why." And she got him back into the script. It was so brilliant because she was that concentrated as an actress. You know what I mean? So at intermission, I went backstage and grabbed her and hugged her. And I said, "You know how brilliant you are and how you managed that the audience never knew. You didn't even miss a beat, Madeline. And it was a great performance." She was incredible in the part. So now, and she got lovely reviews, and we fell in love with one another without the sex. And we used to have dinner every night and just sit and talk. And we were contemporaries, so we had a lot in common. And she told me one night, she said, "Of course, you were the kind of man I fell in love with before I knew what was what, because I'm a gay man." And so that's how but we had a love affair. And so fade out on that story. Then when she opened in New York at Lincoln Center with Sisters Rosenschweig, I went to a performance, and by chance, Carol Channing was there that night also. So we went backstage to see Madeline, and when she saw me, she ran up and she grabbed me and gave me a big kiss. And she said, "Oh, I'm so happy to see you." I said, "And you know how wonderful you are in this play." And she said, now I'm bragging, but it's the story. She said, "I'm wonderful in this play because I worked with you last summer." She said, "Because you gave me a confidence that I have never had in my career. I'm always insecure. I'm always questioning. I drive directors crazy." But she said, "You never let that bother. You always gave me a reason and you gave me confidence." And she said, "Everything you gave me to do got the laugh every night. I've never had that kind of confidence before." And she says, so when I was given this play, I didn't particularly care for the director and I was having problems, but I said to myself, remember what Leroy said, trust your instincts because they're usually right. Trust your instincts. And she said, and when I put on that Chanel suit, I pretended I was Dolly on the ramp. And she said, so my performance is due to you being with me last summer and directing me. And I said, and you know what? You're going to win the Tony Award, and don't you dare let Jane Alexander put you in the featured category. And the night of the Tony Awards, was around 12 o'clock at night, the phone rings. I pick it up, there's background noise, and Madeline said, "Hi, honey, I called my mother first." And so we had that kind of relationship from that point on. And then when I did the second revival of Carol's in New York, Madeline attended opening night, and at intermission, she said, "Oh, was I as good as Carol?" I said, "As good and sometimes better." So when she passed, she married her boyfriend just before she died. And he called me and they had a private service. And he said, "I'm calling because I know that Madeline would want you there." And I said, "Of course I will be there. I will be happy to be there." So it happened. We maintained that friendship. She was an extremely talented lady. And I know she told me so many funny stories This is kind of a dirty story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. When she was filming Frankenstein, Young Frankenstein, she said that Mel Brooks said, "Now, Madeline, now I'll use another word instead of the real word." And he said, "When Frankenstein is stooping you, I want you to sing something." And she said, "Well, what do you want me to sing?" He said, "I don't care, Madeline, just sing something, you know." So she said, oh. So she called her mother, she called her analyst, she called everybody to think of things. She said, "I'm lying in bed at night and I'm thinking, what would I feel like if Frankenstein is stooping me?" She said, "I was going, oh yeah, oh, oh, ah, 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 sweet mystery of life at last." She said, "I've got it." So she said she couldn't wait. So she went in the next day for the shoot. And she said, "I'm ready now." I said, "What are you going to sing?" She said, "You'll just hear." So, and then she did, of course, and that's become legendary, that moment in the movie. And it was funny when she played St. Louis with the Muni doing Hello, Dolly. When they're out on the ramp doing the big Dolly number and they go, "I hear the ice dun 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 tinkle." And she said one night she went, "I hear the sweet mystery of life at last I found you." She threw it in as a counterpart to the number. She said, "I hope I don't get in trouble with Jerry Herman." I said, "Jerry would love it. Leave it in." She said, "But that was of the period. That was turn of the century. So, it's not like it's a contemporary song." I said, "Madeline, do it. It's funny. The audience will love it." And so that's the kind of freedom that you want to give an actor. You want them to go out and create and, not be a robot every night, that you want to experience. The audience is fresh and so are you. So go out, you have your standard of what you know what to do, but then allow the creativity to happen. So from that standpoint, it was a wonderful experience. My second most favorite person to direct was CHITA RIVERA. I directed her in a production of Anything Goes at the Paper Mill Playhouse in Millburn, New Jersey, and it's one of the best things I've ever done. And CHITA, again, was just perfection to work with. You could give her anything as a director and also be very technical, because CHITA's a dancer. She came up through the chorus, and she just, you would give her something to do. She never questioned it. She just did it, and she did it better than what you thought she could do. She was just incredible that way. A brilliant, brilliant artist. And I told the kids when we did that production, I said, "Watch how CHITA RIVERA works, because it's the best example of someone who knows what they're doing, and also the way she handles herself, the way she handles herself with a company. You couldn't ask for anyone better. She's a divine human being." I always said, whatever the rule, CHITA is the exception. She just is a wonderful human being. I keep using the name wonderful, wonderful, but it is such a good word, and it is what those people are. So.
Yeah, and your stories are definitely wonderful too. I'm just sitting here being like, wow. I mean, I could listen to this forever.
It's important, it's like the old saying, you can't let the inmates run the asylum, but you have to be respectful of the people you work with and allow them the freedom to be able to express what they do. Because sometimes wonderful things happen, sometimes not. But you can discuss it, and at least you have the process of allowing the creative input and collaboration, collaboration with the actors and with everybody. I mean, you still have to be in charge. You have to be the one that drives the buggy, but be secure enough to trust the people that you hire, because they go home and they do nothing but concentrate on what they do. And you as a director, you have many things to worry about. But if you hire the right people, they will do most of their work for you. If they need guidance, you give it to them. But if they're on the right track, full steam ahead, let them go. And wonderful things can happen. It's like a laugh that was in Hello, Dolly, in the hat shop scene. And Cornelius is in the closet, and at the end of Motherhood, Dolly says, "So you see, Mr. Vandergelder, there couldn't possibly be a man in that cupboard." And there's a big loud sneeze, and it's from the cupboard. And Carol would look front at the audience and go, "God bless you," which got a huge laugh. Madeline didn't want to do that. It was too set for her. So I said, okay, Madeline, what is your response? I said, do it. So, she said, so you see, Mr. Van de Gelder, there couldn't possibly be a man in that closet. This niece comes, she looks at Van de Gelder and she says, Gesundheit. And he went, so it got the same effect. It was just a different laugh. But that worked for Madeline. And so you give in to that. So that makes her part of it. It's still the same result. You get the laugh, but you have to be open that way. And I know that in one of the scenes, Madeline had to say the word varicose veins reduced. And she said to me, she said, I can't say that line. I said, why? She said, you know what varicose veins are? I said, of course I do. She said, well, they're disgusting. That isn't funny. And I said, well, it isn't so much, Madeline, that they're disgusting. It's the sound of the word. Varicose veins reduced. It's the meter and varicose veins. It's the meter that, I said, so if you could come up with something, unfortunately, Mike Stewart is dead, but I said he won't know, and I can be open enough. I don't want to change the script, but that's a small thing. She went home, she called her mother, she called her analyst, she came in with a whole list of things, and one was facial warts. And I said, my God, Madeline, facial warts makes me want to throw up. I said, but I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a funny word. A funny word is brassiere. Brassiere is a funny sounding word. So if you look at the girl who's heavy that you're talking to and you say, brassiere's reinforced. I said, so we'll try it at rehearsal. If it gets the laugh, I get my way. She said, it's a deal. So we did a rehearsal. Of course, the kids all screamed. So we left that little change in. And I'm sure Mike Stewart, I knew very well. I'm sure Mike wouldn't have minded making that one little tiny change. But what it did, it gave Madeline a creative input. And again, it gave her confidence and security that she was making the part her own. I know that I'm on a jag now about Madeline, but since, you asked, when she went out on the ramp the first time, she was afraid because it's a little ramp in your day. She said, I say, let me hold your hand. Let's walk out on the ramp together. Let's walk out. Let's walk around. And she said, and Leroy, I feel so silly, like Miss America going, while they're singing, I'm looking at the audience. I just feel so awkward. Like I'm praying, here she is, Miss America. I said, but you're not. What you are, Madeline, you're Dolly Levi. You're back in the Harmonia Gardens restaurant, and the audience are all the tables, and you know those people. Those are people you used to see, and you're home again. There's Mrs. O'Reilly. There's Mrs. Schwartz. There's Mr. So these people. So when you're doing this, you're saying, it's me, I'm Dolly, I'm back. So that's what you had to do. And she took it, she ran with it, and it gave her the reality of playing the scene rather than just saying, I'm Miss America walking around the ramp. So, but that's the way she worked. And I respected that, as I respect all the actors that I work with. And they have to have and I know that when I have replaced in 2 Broadway shows, I replaced in Beauty and the Beast, which was the first show I replaced in. Gary Beach got a Tony nomination for playing Lumiere. And I got the part to replace him. And I went into rehearsal, but I didn't have the original choreographer or the director. I had a stage manager and a dance captain. And they were teaching me the show. And I didn't have other actors to respond to. And of course, their job is to do exactly what the person did before. So you walked out, you stop here, you hold your hand up, you hit the button to make the gas. You put the lever for the gas, then you hit the electric button, which lights the light, but you can't use the apparatus because you have to have a stagehand there by the union rules. So I couldn't rehearse with the apparatuses. So you're faced with all of those things. Plus, you have a stage manager saying, you go to 2, you hold your hand up, you say the line, you move. So it's like you're not having any creative input. It was very difficult. And so finally, we got to the point that the regular actors were too tired to come in and rehearse. So the understudies came in one day to rehearse with me. And then I had a put-in with the original cast. And the put-in was the day that I opened that night.
Wow.
So you're under a lot of pressure. Plus, managing that outfit with those big plastic feet, you've got butane tanks on your back for the gas to light the flames, and you're operating all that stuff without having them during rehearsal. So it was very, very complicated. And so I thought, well, the only way I'm going to learn this, just put me on. And I'm not being reviewed right away. And so I'll just learn it when I'm doing the show. So that night, I talked to myself. I was then 52 years old. I looked in the mirror and I said, Leroy, you're 52 years old and you have a candle on your head. So we got ready to go up on stage, and I'm telling myself, just relax, take your time, don't try to perform it, just do technically and be aware of what you're doing so you don't hurt yourself. So I'm in pretty good shape, and as I'm ascending the stairs, one of the chorus members said, oh, Leroy, isn't it exciting tonight? Barbra Streisand's in the audience.
Nice.
So as we're on the castle and it starts going down, I look out in the audience, and there she is, 6 rows back on the aisle, and 2 seats over from her, it's my husband, Bob, who I said, don't come, because I don't know what I'm doing yet. So I was under all that pressure. At one point I counted, they said, Leroy, you're on. I tried to go back and say, no, your hands, you haven't turned them off. I was still flaming. Don't ask. It was a horrible experience. But then by doing it, I finally found my own way. And I know that the original director came back about a week after I was on and said, the only notes that I can give you is I just keep saying, sexy, sexy, sexy. And I said, well, isn't that interesting? Because your stage manager told me, don't be too sexy, Leroy, because it's a Disney show. So I said, I think that you need to talk to your stage manager. He's the one who directed me. You didn't. I said, I could certainly be sexy, sexy, sexy. So I had to find my own way. But it's very hard to go in as a replacement in a show because they basically just want you doing what the other person did. I had the same problem when I replaced Gary and the producers. I did the first national, the second national, and the Las Vegas company of the producers. And I had the same problem there too, was that they basically just want you to do it the other. You can't work like that with creative people. I would never work that way and ask another actor to imitate or do. So it's a hard position to be in. But eventually I found my way, and eventually I made it my own, but there wasn't much help getting there. So no disrespect to the people, but that's what happens when you're a replacement.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot of stories, especially about Broadway and bigger theaters, that if you're replacing someone or if you're the understudy, you got to make sure you do the exact same thing the other person did. And I was like, yeah, but where's you in this? Are you just like copy pasting what someone else did kind of thing?
And when we did the first national company, we were all new people, but we were being trained exactly what the other people had done. So we all struggled a little bit until we finally got in front of an audience, and we eventually found our own spin of what we wanted to do with it. And everybody is different. And when you audition and they find something, then you have to create with that and make it their show, and still getting what you want. But it's very hard in the arts to be imitative, you know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
At least you have to start out and allow a little bit of freedom till the person finds what they're doing. But I can tell you I would prefer never to replace again.
Yeah, it is hard. I feel like it's the best when you originate the role, then everybody has to copy you. You don't have to worry about anything.
Well, I had differences with the producers because to me what was funny about Roger Debris when he's in that dress is that he's a man in a dress. So the thing that makes Leo crazy is that he's never seen a man in a dress before. So that's the threat and that's the humor. So when I come out, I wanted the hair on my chest to show. I wanted the hair on my legs to show, because he doesn't wear a wig and he puts a wig on later. But as he comes out with a man's haircut, all made up in a dress, that's what's funny. And so what I could do, it's not that I'm always this bad, but in my dress, if I sucked in my stomach, I could show my nipples quickly. So, but of course, that's funny to Leo. And when I did the LA company with Marty Short and Jason Alexander, Marty could not do anything the same way twice. He was just too creative. So when you went out and you worked with Marty, you have to go out and almost do improv every night, which is fine with me. I can do that. We play off of each other. And he loved the fact that I could show my nipples by doing that. So whenever possible, I would entertain Marty. Now but I didn't do it I did it as a man just talking because he's got on a dress. So you see, that's what's funny, a man and a dress. So that was my humor, and I did it. I got a lot of notes about it, but I still did it. And Mel Brooks liked it and found it funny, so it stayed in.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's one good story. Now, let me check if we have any more questions. Oh, yes. Oh, my gosh. We have a lot of questions from the audience. Yeah, I feel like we should have made this into like a 5-hour stream, because people now want to know more. The more you tell us, the more we want to know. Yeah, now, okay, let's start with Jay Land's question that he asked a while ago. Well, this one's actually more general, so I guess this could be a quick one. Do you prefer working on Broadway or on touring productions more? And maybe if you could give some reasons or examples of what you do on both and what the differences are for the actors who haven't done both yet.
I just want an audience. It doesn't matter where the audience is. You go out and you do your job and you work, and that's what the reward is working for the audience. Broadway is the ultimate, much more pressure when you play Broadway, but it's very, very exciting. The opening nights, were extraordinary, but then we also, they started having critics come during the week. So we never really had an official opening night. We can debate that till the cows come home as to what people prefer. There's an excitement about having one night that's the opening night that's very exciting. But at the same time, too, if things don't go well that night, it's not as good. So I debate to and from. I've had the experience of both, and I don't prefer one to the other. I understand it, but it's just you do your job for the audience. And I liked touring. First of all, you get a guaranteed salary every week, and also you're playing different cities. So just when you get a little anxious, you're ready to go to a new city. And I like to antique shop, and I like to take advantage of being in a city, and I become a tourist. So I go out and I do things. I think of it as sort of being on a vacation in a way. Sometimes when you do those heavy weekends where you do 2 shows Saturday, 2 on Sunday, and 1 on Friday night, those 5-show weekends can be very hard on you, especially singing. Because, opera singers don't sing twice in a row. And as actors, in musical theater, we do 8 shows a week. Opera singers don't sing that much when they perform. And yet, what we do in our shows is as much singing as you would do in an opera. Anyone who's playing Dolly or Rose and Gypsy, those are heavy parts to sing. There's a lot of vocal, besides all the talking and the yelling and all of that, which opera singers don't do. They just sing. So they can control what they do, where, when you're talking, you don't always, control it as well. So, and you build up your stamina, you do it, but I just want an audience. I've been as thrilled doing a summer stock production or doing a regional theater presentation of something, as long as there's an audience and you play for that. But playing on Broadway is the best. And I must say, and I mean this honestly, I never have been bored doing my work. I did 42nd Street for almost 8 years, and I never tired of those songs. I got a workout. I was in great shape vocally, dance-wise. Mm-hmm. I was stronger than I've ever been. And I never, ever went to work in New York City, going into Times Square has never lost its fascination for me. I get so excited just entering into Times Square, seeing all the lights and walking to a Broadway theater. I've wanted it my whole life, and now I'm doing it. I never tired of it. It was always exciting. And the thing is, the audience is different every night. So you work to get the laughs, you work. And then also, if you have good people to work with, they can be creative. And most of the actors that I worked with are that. Carol Channing was everything had to be, but you could do that and also be creative. And so, yeah, I don't care where it is as long as there's an audience, hopefully a full audience.
Yes, hopefully.
It's sad when you're out and you don't have as much of an audience. You're out there working your ass off and not getting the response. Also, when you do Broadway, it's funny. Like the first couple months, everything gets a laugh, and then suddenly you go out and you play the show the same way, and you don't get the same reaction. And you go, well, now you're into the run. It becomes a whole different thing. And on opening nights, of course, all the stars are out and all this and that. So it brings on a different kind of pressure. It's very exciting, but it's a little frightening too, that you're going to go out and perform for all these people. I know that when we were in rehearsal for Applause, I was a replacement. I wasn't originally hired. I was replaced during the rehearsal. And we did our first run through in a theater, because what we did back in those days, we rehearsed in studios, but then we went into a Broadway theater for a few times to be on the stage again. And we also used to audition in theaters, which we don't do anymore, which is a liability, I think. And the only reason we don't is because of the expense. But we were doing our gypsy run through of Applause. And that afternoon, in the audience was every bigwig, David Merrick, Hal Prince, and Lauren Bacall was making her debut as in a musical. And before it started, we had actually, by some twist of fate, had become close. My very first day of rehearsals, we had a chemistry that remained till the day she died. And I can't explain it to you. It's just, it was there. And Betty, as she preferred to be called, as she said, by her friends. My friends call me Betty. And so she was Betty. And she was standing in the wings, and I could see her hand shaking. And no one would go near her. They just didn't know what to do. So I walked up and I grabbed her hand and I said, why are you afraid? Why should you be scared? It only depends on you. And she laughed. She said, you son of a bitch. She said, just hold my hand. I said, I'm here. She said, don't leave me. I said, I'll never leave you. And I held her hand, and that became our thing that we did before every performance. I would come up at the 5-minute call, stand in the wings, and hold her hand before she went on. So she would hold my hand, and when she made her entrance, that's the hand that she left when she walked on stage. So it became that kind of thing. I loved her so much, and I'm so, again, lucky to have had that experience in my life. And so those are the things that you remember.
Yeah, all the stories actors can tell. Now, for everybody who's watching, we are almost out of time, unfortunately, but we'll try to get your questions.
My God, we've only just begun.
Right? Yes. And everybody's asking questions because your stories are so good. I mean, every time we have someone on these streams, it's like you never want them to end because...
Well, Julia, I have nothing better to do. When you want to come back, you tell your listeners, send in the questions. We'll do a telethon.
Awesome. Well, actually, if you've got an extra 5 minutes, I'll just ask the rest of the questions that I see on the screen right now. And maybe we can, because I don't want to keep you here for hours. I'm sure we'll have enough questions for a few hours.
I have nothing better to do. I enjoy talking about myself, and I like meeting with people, and you're absolutely charming. So it's very easy to talk with you.
Okay, perfect. So everybody, Leroy will be answering more questions. I'll make sure we'll get in. I see some questions from Jaylan, and Lawrence asked another one. So I'll ask those, and then I'll let everybody go. So Jaylan is asking, what techniques should actors who want to become great and very disciplined learn? So I know you talked about great and disciplined actors when you told your story. So what, I guess, acting techniques, or like what things do you think are important?
Well, I mean, the singing and the dancing are obvious. You just get the teachers who teach you how to do it correctly and to how to make it better and use what you have to do to make you different from everybody else, because we don't create and we don't compete in the arts. Competition, they compete in sports, not in the arts. We create in arts. So don't try to compete with the other people or whatever. Do what you do the best that you can and learn as much as you can and practice, practice, practice. Acting is a very gray area. There are different things work for different people. There's no secret. A lot of people want to attend, do the methods and go to the different schools and do all of that. And some people don't. Some people are natural actors. I mean, Doris Day went into the movies and had never acted. And a lot of people have. Your talent is there. And you just try to learn your lines and make it as real as possible and try to concentrate on what the other actor is saying so that you can respond to it rather than standing in front of Mary and say, I am going to the show. I am going to the show. Just say, I'm going to the show, and just say it. But respond to the person you're acting with, and that's how you get the connection. And I have seen great actors on stage who are not saying anything, but you can't keep your eyes off of them because they're thinking and they're in the scene and they're listening. And and you learn by doing. I think, and also by acting with other people, you pick up what they do, and it's a give and take situation. There's no secret formula. I think one thing that you can do as an actor is learn to speak as clearly as you can, especially when you're doing stage work. You have to be understood, and don't mumble. We all try to think that as real people we mumble. Well, no, if you can't hear it and you can't understand it, it's not working. And there is a craft. You have to learn to stand on the stage and not turn in profile all the time so the audience can't see your face. You could make it so that you can be seen as you do what you do. And there's a technique to that. And I think you learn that from the other actors. And when you're doing television or you're doing film, the director, the camera kind of does what it wants to. So, you don't have that problem, but you have to be the camera for the audience when you're on the stage. So there is a technique about standing and gesturing and taking control of the stage. And all the venues are different. Sometimes you're in a big theater, sometimes you're in a smaller theater, and you make that adjustment. But acting is, just something that you have to learn to do, and you learn by doing it with other people. I mean, you can have teachers stand up and talk to you till they're blue in the face, but you still have to get up on your feet and do it. So you listen, you learn by listening, then you practice, 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 practice. I don't know, that's probably not the best answer, for a lot of other people, the best one I can give.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of useful advice in there.
Mm-hmm.
It was to the point. So I'm pretty sure people will get a lot out of that. Now, to follow up on that, Jaylen actually had another question.
Yeah.
What is your definition of a memorable portrayal of a character?
You mean personally for me?
Well, I don't know if Jaylen meant just as like for you as an actor, or for you as a director, or for you as an audience. But I don't know, maybe if you can cover all three, or just say like something in general. What do you think a memorable character is?
I've seen a lot of memorable performances,
Mm-hmm.
and I've seen a lot of actors who have given memorable performances. To speak personally about myself, that's all of the story. But as far as memorable watching Marlene Dietrich do her one-woman show
Mm-hmm.
at the Mark Hellinger Theater was one of the most thrilling experiences of my life. That she came out on stage and in that incredible dress with that down coat that she wore, and watching her pose. And it was all done very technical, by the way. But you wouldn't know it. She controlled the entire audience. She was there by herself. She never changed costume. She never moved much. She had a microphone. And it was incredible what she did. She wasn't a technical great singer like an opera singer, but she was so focused in what she was acting as she sang her song. Oh, you were mesmerized. It was incredible. Another performance like that, now I'm talking musical, was watching Lena Horne, the lady in her music. Mm-hmm. Watching Lena Horne do her one-woman show was another great experience. And it was all about acting. I mean, they were speaking, but it's their concentration and their focus of what they were saying that translated right to the audience. I can't necessarily be so objective about my own performances. I know that probably the role that required more of my acting than the other roles I did was CAGE aux Folles, to play Alban Zaza. And I know that going into rehearsal, I worked with, again, it was the assistant director, because Arthur Lawrence was out of town. And he didn't want to do all the technical things. So when Jerry came to see me, Jerry said, "Leroy, you're too strong. You are too," he said, "you have to be a little more feminine." And I took that to heart, and I realized where I could do it to make the vulnerability. And so it was a good criticism that I took to heart. And then I, of course, put things into my own being. And but there were such wonderful scenes, especially the scene at the end of the show, where the Dandon says, to the son, "Don't tell me that's your mother." And he makes the change of heart and says, "Yes, that's exactly who he is." And every night, I can do it right now, I could cry, because I know what that means, being a homosexual man and delving into this character. So it came naturally every night to do that. And I know that I once got a letter from a woman and her husband that said, "Dear Mr. Reams, my husband and I, our son told us he was homosexual, and we disowned him, and we haven't talked to him in the past couple of years. And we saw your performance last night, and we called our son today." And that meant more to me than any review I've ever gotten. And also to have men come up to me after my performance and applause and say, "I'm homosexual and I never could be, and I saw your performance and applause, and I responded to that and became proud of myself." And to do that, that's what the reward is all about. So those moments have been very satisfying to me, that you can touch someone in the audience and open them up, or, and I was the first, not necessarily the first actor who portrayed a homosexual, but the first outed character in a musical. And the line was that Margot Channing said, "Well, Dwayne, how would you like to take two lonely ladies out on the town tonight?" And he says, "I can't, I've got a date." And she says, "Well, bring them along." And that was and we did a gay bar scene, which was quite shocking. At the time, we didn't think it, but it was. We went to Baltimore, and that's when she said, "Bring them along," the audience went, and then we went right into a gay bar scene where men were dancing with men. And when we walked in, the gimmick was, I walk in and I meet my boyfriend. It's all in pantomime, and I kiss him. I kiss him on the mouth, like that kind of a kiss. Then I turn to introduce Margot Channing, and he puts out his hand, and she shakes his hand where he's just kissed me. That was the joke. When we did that out of town the first time, there was an audible gasp in the audience. And it kind of colored the scene. They were in shock. So the next day rehearsal, Ron Field came in and said, "Leroy," I said, "I know, cut the kiss." So instead of me kissing him, I just hugged him, because it was too shocking for an audience to see that. I mean, can you imagine anything that mild nowadays? My God. But anyway, that's what it was. And so I have that to my credit, that I played the first openly gay character in a musical. And so there you go.
Yes, and just before, for those watching, just before the stream, we discussed with Leroy being a gay actor and what that was like also. So thanks for sharing that, Leroy. I know the times have changed, but it's just interesting to know how it was back then too.
As an actor, you portray the part. You don't have to be the part. If you're playing a prostitute, you don't have to become a prostitute to play it. Use your imagination. That's what the creativity is about, your imagination. And you imagine you're either a straight man or a gay man or an old man or a young man. You take that on as your job to create and portray. And it doesn't matter what the person really is. There have been a lot of gay actors who have played straight, a lot of straight actors who have played gay. It's just up to the talent that you have, but at least be true and bring part of yourself to the character so it rings true. And I know that I had a very sobering experience when I turned 18, that I got my registration for the draft. And one of the questions on the draft was, are you homosexual? Yes, no. Now, there were a lot of homosexuals who went into the armies, into the services, men and women. And because if you said no, yes, then you were classified as 4F, and it could affect your employment because people would say, well, and so it was a decision. And as I'm reading it, my mother said to me, you sign yes, because your father and 3 of your brothers served in the war, and you're not going to go into the war, and you check yes. And I thought to myself, now, am I going to lie to the government? And am I going to be ashamed of who I am? No. And I checked yes. And I got a 4F rating. But it was important to me then to make my decision to be who I am. And I played gay characters in shows. I played straight characters in shows. And you get known as to who you are. Sometimes that affects what they do casting wise. But if you're a good actor, what you do, you work. And I don't care as long as I work. I'm very happy playing gay characters till the day I die, or straight characters, or Italians, or Spanish, or whatever. I just want to work.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Now we are over time, but since we're all okay with staying later, because I know people are asking more questions, I'll ask, we have 2 more questions. I see, okay, let's start with the last one, because we haven't answered any Tyler's questions yet. So Tyler is asking, how was it directing Carol Channing? I'm a big fan of hers.
Well, the first thing was, it was a very strange position to be in, because we were friends, and Carol certainly was directed by Gower Champion and had created that character by herself. And suddenly for me to be in the position of being a director to someone who originated the part and had a Tony Award for it, what am I going to tell her that's going to be of any help? And her husband presented me with a very thick script that one of the boys in the original cast wanted to give Carol a present. And Charles said, well, why don't you write down everything that she does in the show in print, like what number you go to, and they wanted me to work from that script. And I found that counterproductive. I wanted Carol to discover or rediscover the character again, rather than trying to think about what she did before. To me, as a director, it was more important for her, and she resisted it. The first day that we had a rehearsal and Jay Garner was playing, and I started with the eating scene and the last scene, which I did. And Carol contradicted me on one of the ending things, because Van de Gelder goes up to her when she's on the little staircase in the hand feet, and he says, hello, Dolly. Well, hello, Dolly. It's so nice to have you here where you belong. And he puts his hand out. And then during the music goes, da, 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 and she takes his hand. Now, I know that's the way it was, but because Carol was reading that script, she said, no, he puts his hand out on here, and I take his hand on belong. And I said, but Carol, there's a musical interlude there. What do you do during that? She said, I act. I said, I stand corrected. So we did it. And so then we went back to do the scene again. And Jay, very nervous, he said, it's nice to have you here. Where are you? And Carol took his hand on belong and started to walk. And I said, no, Carol, remember, that's where you act. And so that night she called me and screamed at me over the phone. And I said, you know, Carol, your friendship means more to me than this job. So I think that what you need is you need a stage manager to just read that script to you while you try to figure out what you did before. I can't work like that. And it's not worth our friendship. So I will leave, and you don't have to pay me. I leave graciously. We're still friends. And I called Jerry Herman, and Jerry Herman said, you go to rehearsal tomorrow. So I went in, I walked in, and Carol said, good morning, hair director. And I said, good morning, star. And that was it. And then I had a long heart-to-heart talk with her afterward. And I said, Carol, I can't work without you rediscovering some of this stuff. For instance, I said, I think of Dolly as the first women's liber. Here was an Irish girl who probably worked in the sweatshops, because that's all you could do as an Irish person back then, especially a woman. You either worked in a sweatshop or you became a maid. And she was not from aristocracy. So probably she worked in a factory, sewing machine. And Vandergelder would come there to get stuff for his hay and feed store. And also Ephraim Levi, who became her husband, probably went there too to buy fabric for his dry goods store. And they probably saw this cute little Irish girl there working, and they started dating. But there's a sub-story for Vandergelder where he married the boss's daughter. But Ephraim married Dolly, but they probably went out together, and he probably was attracted to her, but she was Ephraim's girlfriend and became his wife. So that's the way it was. And Ephraim, who believed in spreading things around, which meant he spent his money, that when he died younger, Dolly was left a widow. And what's she going to do? Probably there were a lot of people who hadn't paid their bills, and she lost the business. So she became a matchmaker, which is a thing a woman could do. And then she took on other side things just to, survive. And the one thing a woman can do, because she couldn't vote, one thing a woman could do is use her sex to get what she wanted. And that's what she should play for Vandergelder. So that when the jail scene where he says, Dolly Levi, I would marry you, and we were the last person on earth. And she said, oh, she's thinking to herself, well, you don't want to marry me, Ephraim? Well, I don't want to marry you, but guess what? What I got is so good, but you can't have it. So wave your little hand and whisper, so long, dearie, you ain't going to see me anymore, because what I got is so good, but you can't have it. So it's that kind of thing I wanted to bring into. And I also restaged the So Long, Dearie number to make it sexier for Carol, and also to put a few more things like that in the show. She was resistant, but she finally came over. And not that she didn't do what she did before, which she did very well, but even though she may not have agreed, she at least had to think about it. So I think it made it hopefully that she could reinvent rather than just imitate what she did before. And we got through it. But again, create. Don't try to make imitations. You can use something as a model, but then make it your model and make it interesting for the actor playing the part. I would never expect any actor to give the performance the actor before them did. You hire them to give their performance, still within the confines of what the book requires. I mean, there are techniques that we do, but at the same time, you have to use the person that's there and make it creative for them.
I love the director.
I hope I answered the question.
Oh, you totally answered the question. The question was, what was it like to direct Carol? So I think you gave some good examples there. But yeah, I was going to say, I personally love working with directors who give you freedom instead of just saying, do it this way and that's it.
You have to, thank God I had psychology in college, that you have to allow the person the freedom, yet you have to kind of get what you want too.
Mhm.
But you just have to listen to them and be respectful and try not to fight. That's
Yeah, for
counterproductive.
sure.
And, but at the same time, too, as I said, you've got to be driving the horse. So it's up to you to make it happen. That's your job. And Carol, I think it was interesting seeing what she did with Dolly. I mean, I'm sure she knew it well enough, but also I gave her some new things to do, and I also changed the end of uh, the uh, dancing number, where I had her, because I took literally the idea of matchmakers. So at the end, when they all waltz back on, I have her pantomime getting Cornelius and Mrs. Malloy together. And then originally Minnie Fay came and danced around her, went off by herself. But I had Barnaby remain on stage. Then I motioned for Barnaby to come over and then pull Minnie Fay off. So she's making partners. She's putting couples together, you see. And so then when they go off and Barnaby pulls Minnie Fay off, which was not in the original, then Dolly realizes, I've made matches for everybody and I'm still alone. Let me go, Ephraim. It's been long enough. I want to be with someone now too. I'm tired of,
Mhm.
existing from hand to mouth. And, but I want you to give me the sign that it's all. So that way it makes the play better. And to add more romance between Mrs. Malloy and Cornelius, because there's a moment where he looks at her and that's when he falls in love and he gets tongue tied and she looks at him. And it has to be a moment where the audience goes, oh. So those are the moments I like to find for actors. Whether I don't think they were there originally because it was my interpretation, but I'm a romantic kind of guy, and it's my job to feed that to the actors so that they can follow along and add to it.
All right.
So,
Well, thank you for all those beautiful stories. I feel like we will have to have you back on one of these because there's more people asking questions. I'll ask one last one, I promise, and then and then I'll let you go because Lawrence asked something. Um, Lawrence is asking, wonderful director, choreographer, Tony Tremoli memories.
what's that again?
One, I guess, can you talk about working with and or any memories you have about the director, choreographer, Tony Tremoli?
Oh, Tony Sharma. Oh, I loved Tony Sharma.
Oh, I
I
totally
mean,
pronounced that wrong. I
yeah,
was like, is
Sharma.
it Charmely? Yes,
Sharma.
Tony Charmely.
Wonderful. I learned so much from him. First of all, he spoiled me rotten. I learned a great lesson from Tony. When we would come in to rehearse, he would just look at us and he said, I have the best dancers in LA. You all are so fabulous. And he complimented us, he encouraged us. We couldn't wait to get in because we wanted to please, and he was also very expressive that way. And I like that way of working. I learned a lot from Tony doing that, his manner in working with people. He made you feel that you could do anything and we worked so hard for him. And he was I know that I've worked with great choreographers, Garrett Champion, Bob Fosse, Peter Gennaro, let's go down the list. I've worked with them all and they were all wonderful in their own way. My personal favorite was Tony Sharma because he choreographed the way that I like to dance, which was sort of like jazz ballet, kicking the leg and Gene Kelly kind of stuff, but even more balletic. So I like the way that he choreographed that way because that's the way I like to dance. But I also liked his attitude of featuring us and spoiling us and making us think that we were the best dancers in LA. And he was my favorite. I loved him. And, he lived to be, I think, he was close to 100 when he finally passed. And a great inspiration. And the reason I left California, I danced on the Danny Kaye show and I was featured. He was always, but then when I started working for the other choreographers, it was not the same. And that's not what I wanted to do. I didn't want to dance in the ensemble. So doing the Carbonell show, I said, I can't do this anymore. And I had to go back to New York. So I handed in my notice at Christmas and went back to the university, got my master's, and I went back to New York in the fall. I had to go back because I wanted to play roles on Broadway. I didn't want to be a television dancer. I was making good money. I was working. I was with a lot of wonderful people and some attractive people, and I had a good sex life. I mean, it's pretty good being there in California with all those beautiful people, but it's not satisfying me as an artist. So I had to return to New York because this is where my heart is. It's New York. It's the Broadway theater.
Yeah, we've actually had a couple of people on the streams, and they talked about being in theater versus being in film, being in California versus being in New York, and a lot of actors agreed with you. They're like, okay, I know I'm a theater actor. I know I like Broadway. I like New York. That's where I'm happy.
Well, when you're on the stage, you're in control.
Mm-hmm.
You're doing what you want to do. You try to do what the other people tell you, but in the end, you have to satisfy yourself too. So you're in control on the stage. Film, you're at the mercy of the camera and the editor.
Oh yeah.
They can go out, and then when you're in television, it's up to where the camera's going to be when you're acting, and so you're at the mercy of the directors. But when you're on the Broadway stage and you walk out, you're out there alone, and you go from start to finish without stopping and starting and repeating. And when you do film, there's a lot of tedious times. They're setting up the shots and then revving up, and then you give a great thing and something goes wrong, you got to do it again. And we're on the stage, the curtain goes up, you'll walk out and you go to the finish. It's very fulfilling and rewarding.
Definitely. I definitely agree.
And it's your job to do it 8 times a week. If you can't do it, then don't go to the theater. But that's your job. And if you're with good people, you go out and you can still be creative. It doesn't have to get stale. I've never had that problem. Everybody's reaction is relative to what pleases them. And I was meant to be on the stage and work in the theater, and to do Broadway, where you do it 8 times a week, and that's it. It's very fulfilling for me. So here.
All right. Well, thank you for all the stories you told us today. I know that's probably not even half of what happened during your acting career.
A little tiny bit.
Yeah. It's like 1%.
Yeah.
So, but I'm sure there's a lot. I personally also learned a lot from your stories too, like you telling about all those people that you loved working with and the qualities they possess. So I think as actors, we can learn that, those qualities, maybe having those qualities and like discipline and, showing up, things like that is a good thing.
Having been around all those famous people and all those famous stars, and to have experienced Mel Brooks, yeah. I mean, come on. I'm a lucky guy. I keep going back to that. I'm a lucky guy.
All right. Well, I think we definitely will have to discuss having you back on here. Maybe you can just talk about your career, because this is so Julia. Fascinating.
It'll be my pleasure, and it's nice meeting you. And so we're now friends.
Yes. And everybody who's watching, everybody's saying thank you for staying, first of all, for an extra almost 30 minutes. So I appreciate that. I usually try to keep it at 1 hour, but...
My pleasure, Julia. Anytime, give a call and we'll do it again.
Oh, I'd love to. And I'm sure everybody else would love to. So for everybody watching, the next time we schedule a stream with Leroy, if you follow this page or if you join our Facebook group, I posted the link at the top of the comments. So if you scroll up, it should be the first comment on under this video. You can join that group and once again, or follow this page, and you'll be notified about the live videos and the new events. I post them usually as soon as they're scheduled. So if you want to make sure you don't miss the stream with Leroy, the next one, or any of the streams we have coming up, make sure to do that. And just an FYI, we have 2 streams with agents coming up, talking about getting an agent, headshots, resumes, how to do those right, how to do video auditions, because, currently video auditions are the thing that everybody does. So join us. Our next stream is next Thursday. We will be skipping Monday this coming week, but we will do the stream on Thursday with one of the bigger agencies in New York, and then we'll have a boutique agency on Monday to talk about the differences about auditioning for both. So join us, and Leroy, I hope to have you back soon. We'll talk about all the And I also, we're having Lawrence Loritz back too. I know, if Lawrence, if you're still watching, I've still got to get back to Lawrence on when we're doing that. So it's,
Yeah.
I feel like every time we do a stream with someone, everybody just wants more and more and more. So I'm like, oh my God, we got to do these like every day now. But yeah, I had lots of fun today. Thank you so much. And I'm sure everybody else enjoyed it. Yes, I see a lot of thanks in the comments.
It was my pleasure, and I look forward to the next time.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for watching. And thanks again, Leroy. And have a good night, everyone.